What's going on, guys? I'm Bill and welcome to Bill's How-To. If you guys want to learn how to make a cubby house just like this, stick around because I'm about to show you guys how to do it. You like your cubby house, Sophia?
Yeah.
Alright guys, this is day one of building the cubby house. First thing we're starting with is the base, which is the flooring. I'm using 70 by 35mm timber, and the total dimensions of the cubby house is 2.4 meters wide by 2.4 meters deep. Before completely fixing the flooring all together, you want to make sure that the base is square, because if the foundation is not square, then the rest of your project will also be off. So the way we check for squareness is to simply get your tape measure, and you want to measure diagonally across from one corner to the other, write down the measurement, and then we want to compare it with the other corner. So once again, measure from one corner to the other, making note of the measurement, making sure that the measurements are exactly the same. If they're not, then your framing is out and you might need to make minor adjustments before nailing it all together securely. So once you're happy with your measurements, simply nail it all together and we're ready to move on to the next step. So the next thing we're doing is attaching the weed mat to the base of the flooring. The whole purpose of this is to stop the grass from growing into or through the flooring, as this is being built over the grass. Once you've got your weed mat all nice and secure, we can then place the base where you'd like the cubby house to sit. I've cut some legs or posts for the base, as mine will be concreted into the ground. So what I've also done is cut some timber so that I can use them to position the base level on the ground. So just by using a spirit level, we're able to make any adjustments that we need to do before we need to concrete the posts or the legs into the ground. In my case, I chose to concrete it. You don't have to concrete it so long as your ground is level and flat. For the flooring, I've used a Merbau decking. It's a little bit more expensive, but definitely gives you a better finish, and it's also safer for the kids to be walking on barefoot. Now for this part, I haven't shown you guys how to fix this to the floor. It's very basic to do. All I did was I used a brad nailer, which are very small nails, and I nailed them through. If you haven't got a brad nailer, you can use a hammer and nails or screws. So what I'm working on now is the first frame. I'll be building all my frames on the actual base of the cubby house, because this is now a flat, level and square surface to work from. At the moment, I'm cutting all my upright posts at the height of my cubby house, which is 1800 high or 6 foot tall. So this is a perfect height for me to get in and out, as I'll be playing in the cubby house also with the kids, and it gives them a lot of time to be able to grow into the cubby house. So I'm cutting my upright posts at 1.8 meters high. I've also got my top and bottom rail ready to go. It might not make a lot of sense to you guys exactly what I'm doing right now. However, if you watch throughout the video, you'll get to see it all come together and everything will start to make sense. So at the moment, I'm just measuring and marking all of them across so I can get ready to cut them. So as we go along in this video, if there's anything that you're not sure of or any questions that you've got, put them in the comment section below and I'll be happy to help you guys out. So once all the upright posts have been cut, simply space them out evenly. I find it easier to mark everything out beforehand, or your spacing. That way you can just slide your timber into position and nail it in place. Once this is done, we need to again once check and make sure that everything is square. So you can use the method that I've showed you earlier on with a tape measure. However, this time I'll just be using a square, going around checking the corners before I move on to the next step. Once this is complete, the next thing we'll be working on is the pitch for the roof. So the pitch for the roof is set at 22.5 degrees, and I'll show you guys in the next frame exactly how to cut that into position. So once you've cut your 22.5 degrees, you want to also make sure that the pitch is centered in the frame. So what I've done is I've marked the center at the bottom of the frame and also at the top, which is at 1200 wide. The reason why I've done it at 1200 wide is the total width of my cubby house is 2.4 meters, so I've gone halfway through at 1200. Then I use a straight piece of timber running all the way through the frame, making sure that I'm also getting the pitch centered. So this is a very important step, especially on the first frame, as this frame will be the template for the rest of the frames to come. Also, I'll be using spare blocks of timber which I've cut to use as chocks and provide extra support. These can be glued and nailed into position. Once they've been placed on either side, you can then nail them into place. The next thing we'll be doing is measuring for the upright support in the pitch, which is nailed from the bottom and also the top. Now that the first frame is complete, we'll be using the bottom frame as a template for the next frame. So what we're doing is making 3 frames exactly the same as the first one, with the uprights, rails and pitch ready to go. So following the same as the template, nail them all into place. So now what I have here is some spare blocks of timber which I'll be using to support underneath to lay my new timbers on. With the second frame, I'll also be adding some windows, so now I need to add additional support and spacing for the size of the windows. So this step might vary depending on the size of the windows that you're going to have, or if you even have any windows at all. So we'll be doing the same thing on the other side, making sure the spacing is the same and that our windows are even on both sides. So as I said before, using a circular saw, it has the option to tilt at 22.5 degrees, which we'll be using to cut our pitch. So as you can see, that will now be the joint for our pitch. So 2 pieces at 22.5 degrees, and that's the finished cut. Once again, lay the pitch on the template from the first frame, making sure that everything lines up perfectly and nail it into place. So what I'm doing now is adding another support and filler piece, which will keep the windows spaced evenly and also provide my doorway in the middle. So once again, for the third frame, we'll be repeating the process from the first 2 frames, and this will be the last of our frames with a pitch on it. Now that the 3 frames with the pitches are complete, the next 2 frames we're building are the side 2 walls. So the 2 side walls that we're building now are not the same width as the first 3 frames. These will be at 1800 wide rather than 2400 wide, and the reason for this is because we're having a veranda at the front of the cubby house. If you guys remember at the start of the video, you could see a little veranda or patio at the front of the cubby house. That is exactly what we're factoring in right now, and that's the reason why we're cutting it at 1800 wide. So the reason for that is because we're leaving a 600 space for the veranda or patio area. So once the side wall is complete, this is what it looks like, and we'll be making one more side wall like this, using this as a template with the addition of an extra window and a doorway. So as you can tell, the timber is a little bit different in colour. That's simply because the grade of timber is a little bit different, and this is what was available at the time. So once again, I'm nailing in the support panel for the window and also the doorway on the other side. Once again, the measurements will differ depending on the size of the window or doors that you're installing. The average size door for this cubby house is 720mm. It might look a little bit confusing at the moment, but believe me, over the next few minutes you'll start seeing everything come together and it'll make complete sense. So what I'm working on now is the cladding for the pitch. The reason why we're doing the cladding of the pitch on the ground is because we have to cut the excess from the pitch, and it's a lot easier and more comfortable to do this while the frame is on the ground. So the most difficult part of this is to make sure that the first piece of cladding you install is level. This is very, very crucial, as this step will ensure the rest of your cladding is also level. The way I'm making sure that it's level is by running the tape from the bottom of the frame all the way up to one side of the cladding, making sure that the measurement is the same on the other side of the cladding as well. Also, make sure when applying the cladding you use glue as well as nails. If you don't use glue on the cladding, they tend to warp when exposed to the weather over time. Once again, I'm using the brad nailer to fix this into place. If you don't have one, you can also use hammer and nails, but as you can see, this way is much faster. With the cladding, it's a tongue and groove system, which means that the tongue will slot into the groove of the next piece of cladding. Once the first piece of cladding has been installed nice and level, the rest of your cladding will also be installed level. So at the moment we're only doing the pitch of the roof, as the rest of the cladding will be installed once the frames are up. Now that the top is all cladded, we want to cut off any of the excess cladding. So by using a straight piece of timber or a straight edge, we're able to mark up the straight line along the pitch of the roof, marking away any of the excess that needs to be removed. Do the same thing on the other side, and then using the circular saw, we're going to cut the excess off. Now the frames I'm putting together here are the frames that we made in part 1. All I'm doing is simply nailing them to the floor and nailing them to each other. Now I'm using a piece of timber as a prop to hold up the frames as I go, making sure everything's nice and level, and I'll work my way all the way around. So I'm going to miss the next couple of frames just to get a bit ahead in this video. It's a fairly simple process and very repetitive. The next thing we're going to be doing is simply putting a weather strip on all corners. Now this weather strip is 20mm thick by about 30mm wide. The whole purpose of this is just to simply keep the weather out, as the name suggests. What I'm using is an offcut of cladding. Now this cladding is the same thickness as the weather strip, and I'm using this to make sure that everything's flush as I go along. So making sure the top is flush, moving it all the way down, and then making sure the bottom piece is flush also. That way this weather strip won't stick out, and it'll also be flush with the cladding. So now that the weather strip is done, the next thing you want to do is get your cladding sorted. So we're taking the measurement up to the cladding from the doorway. This is the section that's above the window, so we're going to simply take that measurement and making sure to have glue on the timber before you put your cladding down. This will prevent it from bowing in the future. So what you want to do is use the tongue and groove system. Okay, you can clip that in from the bottom, get it in nice and tight, and then simply nail it down. Sometimes you might find that the cladding that you're using is already bowed and it might be a bit difficult to get it in the traditional way. What you can do in that case is just use the tongue and slide it through the groove as I'm doing there. That way you might find it a bit easier to get it in. Now when you're applying your cladding around the window frames and the door frames, you don't have to be 100% having it hard up against the timber. The reason for this is that we're going to cover this later on with the architraves. So having architraves around the windows and doors will cover any of your little flaws. This is the complete finished product now. So the only thing left to do after this is to simply trim back the cladding around the windows. So I'll show you guys in a second. I'll be using a multi-tool to do this. Very easy, and it saves a lot of time. Better than pre-cutting it before I put it around the window. I'll simply cut it out with a multi-tool. So now that the cladding is all complete, the next thing we want to do is put some trim around the doors and the windows. From memory, this was about 90mm. Okay, simply glue it and then nail it down into place. So this is around both your windows and your doors. Once that's complete, it'll give it a nice clean finish, and then we'll be able to work on the architraves after that. So as you guys can see, there's a bit of a gap between the cladding and the new piece of trim that we've put in. This will all be covered by the architraves. So 45-degree miter cuts for the architraves, pretty standard. Okay, work your way around the windows and also around the doors. So now that the architraves are complete, the next thing we'll be working on is the front frame. Okay, this is the frame for the patio. So what I'm working on now is simply getting everything into position for my pickets and my top rails. So making sure that my pickets are all the same height and my top rail is also going to match up against the pickets, making sure they're all flush. So I've already pre-marked all my positions to make sure that my pickets are evenly spaced. Once I do that, I'll nail one nail in through the bottom, working all the way through. Then I'll be able to adjust it, making sure they're all level, and finish off with the following nails. So in order to have the front frame attached to the cubby house, we need to first put on our roof battens, okay, or roof rails. So these rails are two on either side of the pitch, two pieces of timber, line them into position, running all the way from the back to the front of the cubby house. This will hold all the frames into position, as well as allow the roof sheets to have something to screw into. So now that the roof rails are in position, we're now able to pick up our front frame, put it into position, and then we're going to be using a piece of timber to prop it up. So using the clamps, prop one on the front and one also on the back. So we'll make sure that it doesn't fall back, both backwards and forwards. Then we're able to get up, get everything in line, make sure it's all level, and nail it into position. So now that we've finished our final frame, we can remove all our props, measure up and complete the railings that are going around the patio area. So a couple pickets, couple rails, and that's all complete. After a hard day's painting, this is the final product. And I must say it looks a lot better once it's painted. So one of the final things to do now is to simply get our roof sheets on top, and these will be screwed into place. To finish off the roofing, we've got a ridge capping that's going to seal off that top end of the pitch on the roof. So simply a couple more screws up on top from that, and then the roof is all completed. So now that the roofing has been completed, guys, there's only one more thing left to do, and that's the final touch at the front of the cubby house. So a piece of trim just to hide where the roof sheets and the timber meet. So we're just going to cover that up by putting a piece of trim, 22.5 degrees cut once again. Hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. If there's anything else that you guys want to learn how to do in or around your house, put it in the comment section below and I'd be happy to show you guys how to do it. Until next time, I'm Bill. Thanks for watching Bill's How To.